What's going on, guys? My name's Chris and I'm with Bourbon of the Week, and we have another special one for you today. This is the Woodford Reserve's Master Collection. Now this says 16th edition on it, but it actually says 15th edition on the website. So it's the 2020 Masters Collection. We'll just go with that. This comes in at a sweet mash bill, by the way, which we'll go over in a minute. But everybody knows before we get started on all of that, time for the traditional sip. Damn. That's right, this comes in at 72% corn, 18% rye, and 10% malted barley, which is a very well-balanced mash bill if you ask me. 72% corn is going to give you a lot of sweetness. That 18% rye is still going to give you a little bit of that rye kick. And then 10% on the malted barley side is what I'm finding out to be that nuttiness. So like that nuttiness that like Jim Beam almost has. That maltiness, that nuttiness is coming from that 10% malted barley. We have some that like 5% malted barley, so they don't have that as much. But being at 10% is a pretty good spot for it. It's a well-balanced flavor profile as I'm sipping it for the first couple of times here. But at the same time, the story behind this is there is a 17-year-old aged bourbon in this. Now the question is, how much of this is a 17-year-old aged bourbon? And that's an answer that we don't really get. We did Bardstown the other week, and that breaks it down for you right on the side. So we knew that a 13-year aged bourbon was in this, and we knew that 40% of it was. Now the question is, what percentage of this is a 17-year-old bourbon? And when you taste it, you want to think that it's a lot, but at the same time, why wouldn't they put that on the bottle? Why wouldn't they give us a breakdown, or at least on the website? Now this says it's Series 16. The website says it's the 15th batch. It's the 2020 edition. They got a lot going on. They got a lot of unknowns going on with this bottle. It's a 90.4 proof, which isn't too bad. You definitely don't get a lot of a ethanol kick on this. And that's where we're going to start. As you know, we start here with drinkability on this channel because we like to keep things simple. Drinkability, how much ethanol kick does this really pull out? Is it overwhelming? Is it a good ethanol kick with a little bit of heat? Because sometimes you want a little bit of an ethanol kick. 90.4, you don't want anything too crazy because you're not really getting the proof to back up the kick if there is one. And I can tell you right off the bat, there isn't that bad of an ethanol kick for this. I would say maybe drinks right at the proof. It definitely doesn't drink over the proof. Like if I took a sip of this and you asked me the proof without me knowing it, I would probably say like it's 90, 91 proof, which is 90.4, right at that proof mark. It's got a little bit of a spice to it, but I really believe that that's a little bit of that rye, not like a black pepper, but definitely like a rye spice, some type of baking spice or something like that, more than it is an actual ethanol kick. So they do a very good job on drinkability on this. I like it a lot on the drinkability side of things. Not too bad, especially for like a beginner bourbon drinker. You don't want to really throw yourself into a barrel-proof Elijah Craig. Maybe open yourself up with a Woodford Reserve because that sweetness really kind of balances out that ethanol kick as well. Whereas if you get a rye, you're really going to get a Kentucky hug that might not be justified behind the proof. But 90.4, very good ethanol. Not a very good ethanol. Very good drinkability. Very good drinkability on this. I like it a lot. We're going to give it, I'm going to say like a 9.1 when it comes to drinkability on this. I think the ethanol could be a little bit higher as far as the proof on this, especially with such an older aged bourbon in this. I think that really helps it as well because it's so old, bringing out those other flavor notes that you're really not going to get a big ethanol kick. So for this, we're going to go with a 9.1. Next, that's going to bring us over into taste on this, and that's where I really struggle on this bottle. Now this bottle, it's hard to really explain the taste. Now I can go over the flavors. That's getting kind of easy to figure out. Definitely vanilla, caramel, your brown sugar. A little bit more brown sugar than anything else on those sweet notes. Maybe like a dark fruit type of thing. Now, obviously, I drink this. I try to pull out the flavor notes. I take my own notes. And then I go on and I see what I'm supposed to be tasting. And there's one thing that really stood out for me. And I've talked about dark fruits all the time on this. And I've never really thought of raisin. This mentions raisin on their website. There's a couple other reviews that mention raisin as well. And I don't usually like to mention that because I don't want you to think that I'm just going out there searching all these flavor profiles and then regurgitating them to you, because that's not what I'm doing. I'm picking out what I can get. Then I go out, I do a little bit of research to see what I'm supposed to be getting. If I can get them, then I'll tell you that. But at the same time, raisin, I love raisins. I'll eat raisins. I'll get one of those big boxes of raisins. I'll even go grab one and show you. I love raisins. I eat them all the time. I get raisins in this, and I would have never thought of raisins until when I saw it, it like clicked to me. Like that's the flavor that you're getting. So I love raisins. I love the sweetness that's in this. I love the vanilla. I love the caramel. I don't love the oak. I should stop right there. The sweetness I love. And then it kind of transitions into this very dense, very heavy oak tobacco flavor, which, as you know, is not my favorite. And I'm assuming, again, that that's that age coming out of this bottle, which makes me want to believe that it's an older bottle. It's a substantial percentage of an older bottle as well. It's not just like a 12 or 15% of the 17-year aged bottle. It's a substantial amount. So you start with that sweetness. It's very good. You get into that oaky, tobacco, smoky flavor. Not my favorite, but it balances itself well. But then there's also something in this, and if you don't already know, Woodford Reserve goes out and they do a pot still. They have their picture. I'm sure you've seen it if you've seen any type of Woodford Reserve stuff. It's the 3 different copper pot stills, which is an awesome little setup. I shouldn't even say little. It's obviously a huge setup. It's an awesome setup that they have visually and what they can do with a pot still. Obviously, we've talked about pot stills on the channel before. It's awesome that they can do that. Something about a pot still, we've done the Balcones pot still, we've done this one that's a pot still, and we've done a few other that are pot still as well. It has a flavor that I haven't been able to put my finger on, but no matter what, I can tell that it's a pot still. I don't know why. It almost feels like a craft bourbon. Like when you drink a lot of craft bourbons, you get this flavor. It's not like a young flavor, and maybe you've had bourbons and it's a pot still, or maybe you know more about the pot still process than I do, but you can just almost drink it and there's just this really unique flavor profile. And it's not bad by any means. It's just not for me. So I'm just so torn on this because it tastes delicious, but then it opens up into these other flavor profiles that aren't my favorite. Now, they might be your favorite. If you like an oaky, smoky tobacco, you're going to love this. If you like that pot still, then you're going to love this. It's just not for me, but at the same time, that sweetness that it starts with is 100% up my alley. The rye that it has kind of in the middle there, so it's sweet rye and then into that smoke and that oak. It dries out at the end as well, and I know I'm going very detailed in on this. It's just that detailed. There's a lot going on in this bottle. I'm assuming there's some younger bourbons in this. If it has a 17-year-old bourbon in it, it's probably got a 4, maybe a 3. They don't have a age statement on this, so again, it's got to be over 2 years, but at the same time, how much of this is 17-year-old bourbon and how much of this is younger bourbon that's just sitting around the warehouse that they want to get rid of for a limited release type of bottle like this where they know they're going to sell it because everybody wants to get their hands on it. That's just my opinion on this. Very good flavor profile to start. Kind of opens up into some other flavor profiles that I don't personally enjoy, but I know a lot of people in the bourbon world do. I don't think it's a bad flavor profile. I don't think that anything about it kind of like makes you not want to drink it again. It makes me want to take another sip, but at the same time, I'm not reaching for this bottle every night. I'm not like, oh, I got to go back to that Woodford Reserve Masters collection. Just because of personal preference over anything else. The distillery, the blending process is all fantastic for this. They know what they're doing. They've been doing it long enough. The people in charge, obviously Chris Morris is one of them that's involved in this. Back in 2003, obviously 17-year-old bottle, do the math, 2020. 2003, master distiller Chris Morris. He knows what he's doing. They know what they're doing. They're putting out a product with their same mash bill that they put out for all their other products. Just something about it at the end with the pot still, I think, and then a couple of those flavor profiles that are a little too dense for me personally. So, with all that being said, I'm sorry for the mouthful there. I'm going to give this like an 8.1 because I really don't want to drop it below an 8. It doesn't deserve to be below an 8. A lot of people will have this a lot higher when it comes to the taste profile. Personal preference, not my cup of bourbon, not my cup of tea. But at the same time, they are going to appease a lot of bourbon drinkers with this flavor profile. I'm just personally not one of them. I do love their double oaked. Double oak, now that reminds me. This does have a little bit of a chocolate note when it comes to that sweetness as well. The double oaked, when I first drank the double oaked, immediately chocolate. First thing you can smell coming off the bottle. And now that I'm getting into this, there's a little bit of a chocolate note for this as well. So chocolate, raisins, vanilla, caramel, maybe even a little bit of honey when you're getting into it. Then the oak, the tobacco, the dryness, the rye. It's all happening here. It's all happening in this bottle. And it's happening well. It's a good flavor profile. It's just not my favorite when it comes to this personal one. So I'm going to give it the 8.1 that I think it deserves personally, but I know a lot of people will put it a lot higher than that. And last but certainly not least, that's going to get us into price on this. MSRP, like I mentioned, $130 on this bottle. And I know what you're thinking, that's a lot of money. And if you're new to the bourbon world, I understand that that's a lot of money. But when you really break this down, what you're getting here, again, we're kind of torn. A 17-year-old bottle, Woodford Reserve, everything that they're putting into this is fantastic. The time, the patience. We're going to get into the actual distilling process as well for Woodford, which is amazing. So everything that goes into this bottle tells you that it should be an older bottle. It's a limited release. It's a 2020. It's a master's keep. It says everything you want. A very rare, very fine, rare bourbon. So it's got everything that you want. The bottle shape is different than your typical... Where's my other Woodford? I have this one. This is the double oaked. So you can see that. And then I have the empty regular Woodford as well. So you can see that. So the bottle shape is different. So they make it definitely look cooler. I like this bottle shape the best, to be honest with you. This flask looking one's kind of cool, especially with the minis. This one over here, just like a miniature size, also kind of cool. So everything that goes into this bottle is telling you that it should cost money. $130 for what you're getting here isn't a bad price. I've talked a lot of crap on high budget bourbons, $200 bottles for the Elijah Craig single barrel. We've done a couple other more expensive bottles as well. I don't hate this at $130. I think at $130, if you can find it at MSRP, that's where it deserves to be. Now, I paid $142 for this across state lines in New Jersey. Do I think $10, $12 difference? No, it was probably mostly tax when you think about it. $130 to $142. I'm just going to call this one on MSRP. Now, I know a lot of you are going to yell at me and be like, Chris, that's not fair. You talked about $150 versus, or a $200 bottle for $130 MSRP before. I get that, but at the same time, this isn't going, it seems like, on the secondary market a lot. You're not finding this. Maybe you are. I'm not. I'm not searching sites and finding the Master's Keep out there for $500, $1,000, $2,000 or anything like that. I think people are buying them at $130, maybe a little bit more at $140, $145, and then I think people are keeping them, opening them, trying them, and enjoying them themselves. So we're going to put this in at $130 MSRP, and that's what we're going to rate it at. And again, everything that this bottle has to offer, everything that this bottle is giving you, I think it deserves to be around that $130 mark. Obviously, I don't want to ever pay that much for a bourbon, but I understand why people will, I understand why people do, and I understand why they're charging for that. So I don't hate it at $130, and I'm going to give it like a 8.6 when it comes to price. So while I add these scores up, let's send it over to this week's Bourbon Bomb of the Week and learn a little bit about Woodford Reserve because they got a cool little story behind their distillery. For this week's Bourbon Bomb of the Week, we're going to go over Woodford Reserve Distillery because they open up their website to a little bit more information than they're willing to share on their actual bottles. They go over the 5 keys to bourbon, which happen to be grain, water, fermentation, distillation, and obviously maturation. For grain, they tell us what their mash bill is. We've already talked about it. I love that they're upfront about that. They're transparent about that. A lot of companies try to hide it. For water, this is a cool one. They actually use water from right underneath their building. They don't bring in water from the public. This is their own sourced water from right underneath the building. It obviously goes through that limestone, mineral-rich type of rock that everybody finds in Kentucky, which is going to give this a different flavor profile than anybody else has since they're sourcing their own water. Next is going to be fermentation. This is actually one of the longest fermentation processes that takes place on any bourbon. And the thing is, they use their own particular yeast strain. We've talked about Four Roses before, the yeast strain. It can offer up different flavor profiles, whether it's fruity or spicy or floral. So the fact that they're using their own yeast strain, it kind of just keeps everything in-house. Love that they're doing that. Next is obviously distillation. We've already talked about the 3 giant copper pot stills that they have, along with column stills as well. So when they can combine these processes, it really gives out a unique flavor profile that nobody else has. And last but not least is maturation. They are building their own barrels in-house. They're not outsourcing it. They're not bringing barrels in. They're not sending their product out to be barreled and then brought back in to be bottled. Everything's done in-house, from the water to the grains to the yeast to the barreling. It's just an awesome distillery. Seems like an awesome process. I would love to get out there and visit it myself. Hopefully I can make a trip soon. But that's what we're going to get with Woodford. So awesome distillery if you ask me. Hope to visit soon. Cheers. So if you ever get the chance, go out, make sure you visit Woodford Reserve. I know I'm going to when I get the chance. I was trying to get out there before this whole COVID pandemic hit, but I'm double vaxxed up now, so maybe we can get out there soon. But as for this is going to score an 8.6, which is an awesome spot for this. I actually think it's one of the highest spots for such a high priced bourbon. I don't like paying a lot of money for my bourbons. Why pay all this money when you're just going to drink it, especially when there's so many out there that you can get for such a cheaper price. I like that $55, $60 price point. So for being more than double that, this scored very well. 8.6 is where this is going to fall, and I like it right there. So that's going to be it for this week. Make sure you check me out on Instagram, though, at Bourbon of the Week, because every Tuesday at 4 p.m. we drop an image of the bourbon that we're going to review that very next day. If you go on, you can guess the score that you think I'm going to give it. If you guess the closest, I'm going to give you a shout out on the channel, as well as entered in a monthly drawing. Also, check out the Patreon link down below, as well as our Discord. We got a bunch of people in there chatting about bourbon every day, so come join us on Discord as well. If you don't know what Discord is, shoot me a DM. We'll get you set up. That's going to be it, though. Don't drink and drive. Drink responsibly. Stay healthy. Stay happy. Stay drinking.